and the producer, Sol Bapalopoulos. Please, during the press conference, don't take any more photos, if you'd be so kind. And they're awaiting your first questions. Yes, in the front row. Microphone, please. Hi. Un momento. Gentlemen, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes, good. Okay. You have a volume control there. Un momento. That's it. Let's get that organized. Are you comfortable now? The three of you okay? Okay, you okay, gentlemen? Lovely. Good. Yeah. Okay, question. Good morning. The entire film, for me, it seemed that there were many moments which are very picturesque. They were like paintings. One that I liked very much was the wedding when the bride was singing. I would like to know what pictorial references you had in order to do this and put it on the screen as you did. I think what pictorial references that you have, because they look very picturesque. Oh, they're not working now. Sorry about this. It's okay. Tranquilo. Thank you.
Could you repeat the question for me?
Yes, he said that the film, he saw that a lot of the shots were taken and they looked like paintings, especially the one where the bride sings the song in the barn. Okay, and he would like to know what pictorial references you had in order to do this, to put it on the screen as such. Okay.
When we were setting it up before we shot. Andy Harris, who designed the production, said, did I know of a Danish painter at the end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th century called Hammershøi? And I said, no, I haven't heard of him. So he showed me some of Hammershøi's paintings, which basically are like Vermeer, but with a kind of northern light. Empty rooms, doors that are just open, a window, and very often a female figure, usually with her back to you, but the actual look has the stillness of Vermeer, who's my favorite painter. And I said that we've got to make it look like Hammershøi.
Hi, a question to the director. I would like to know what documenting because it looked very realistic, that early 20th century Scotland. How did you document yourself in order to portray that so well?
Well, there are a lot of photographs of the period, but they, of course, have to be interpreted. That's where the look came from actually how those cottages and farmers lived. So that combined with the Hammershøi, I think solved the problem. But we had lots of photographs of what it was actually like.
¿Más preguntas, por favor?
Further questions, please. He has a question, the moderator on your left, for the director on your left there, Mr. Davies. The first time this work was shown on TV, wasn't it? Prior to this novel on the film. How did the idea occur to you, having known that it had already been shown on TV beforehand? That is, say, the work of the. You press the button, haven't you? Yes. Okay. Can you hear me now, Mr. Davies?
Maybe you can listen to that.
Okay. Mr. Davies, just once again, he said the question was asked by the moderator on your left, who's on the panel with you, and he just asked whether, how did you go about it, given the fact that the novel, it seems, had already been shown on TV, and so on and so forth, and whether that was a problem for you vis-a-vis putting it on a screen in a feature film?
No, because I saw it in 1971 on a series on BBC. I was still 18 and I was still working in an ordinary job. I was working in an office. I just waited each week, each Sunday, to see the next episode. I'd never heard of this man before. And then I went out and bought the book. And I just read it because I'd happened to see the serial on television, never thinking that I would ever do anything with it, because I was still working in an accountant's office. But that seed dropped in 1971, and it came to fruition today. But getting it to the screen has taken 18 years.
Yes, hello.
Question in English.
Movie. There's a reference to socialism at the beginning, and the word comes and then disappears and then comes again, and for some reason that word disappears in the final scene. I mean, the deserter is shot for something very personal. He's not shot for basically deserting for some higher political ideal, so to speak. Why is it that the word socialism is present at the beginning in the context of, and then absolutely disappears when on the trenches?
But the important thing is, the important thing is the story. Socialism is part of that, but I'm not a political filmmaker. I've always been a socialist all my life, but I'm far too emotional to actually make a film that is political. That's not the issue here. The issue was to tell the story, and the story about how the land changes you and how you are bound to it, and at the end there is hope. At the beginning, the girl is just simply telling her what will happen when the revolution comes. And it's a joke, because the revolution never comes in Britain. It never, ever does. And I'm not a political animal, and I was not interested in that side of the story, which is actually not that big in the book. I think it's more important to show how Chris changes and becomes the land. And actually, the main thrust of the narrative is, at the end, to forgive all suffering. Because if you forgive, then you can release yourself from the past, and then you have hope. For to be without hope is the worst thing in the world. Despair is worse than any pain. And she has hope. And that's more important, I think, than the politics, at which I'm not very good.
If I can just interject for a second as well, I think from Ewan's story point of view, I think it's stronger for Chris and Ewan that the thing about deserting and cowardice is about love. It's not about politic or socialism. It's about the bond between a male and a female, and how humans can deal with that under stress and trauma. So I think it's stronger and far clearer for the audience's point of view. I think we fall in love with the characters all the more because it's not about politics, it's about human beings.
Hi, question for Kevin. Congratulations, by the way. Terrific.
Thank you.
Terrific. And how well did you know the book before, or did you know the book before, and how did you, I know it's been a long wait, but how did you approach the character, first of all, during the initial stages, and then when it came to filming?
Well, I was well aware of the novel. Being from Scotland, it's a revered classic, heavily underrated, might I add, unfortunately. Hopefully not as a result of the film's release. But I was well aware of it at high school in my late teens, and I also studied the character of Ewan when I went to drama school at the Royal Scottish. So I was aware of the story, I was aware of the character, but by the time I'd come to read Terence's adaptation, it was the finest depiction of the story that I'd ever read, and there's screenplays and there's teleprograms of it, and Terence's is by far and away the most beautiful and the clearest, I think, in terms of how he focuses the story on the love story. In terms of preparation and character development for Ewan, he, first and foremost, is a victim of his time, and a character who is very, very much unable to articulate how he thinks and feels. He's a man of the land, a man of the earth, and therefore his feelings and emotions are about the gravitas that come with that. He doesn't over-emote or over-articulate things. So I guess I had to sort of trust in the environment that we were filming in, and trust in the material that Terence had created, along with, obviously, Lewis Grassic Gibbon. The novel is a plethora of that kind of detail. So there's a wealth of context that comes with the novel that I was able to really tap into, and being able to work with Terence, who is, revered, it should be revered, but again, unfortunately, undervalued and underrated in our country. One of the finest filmmakers of our time, and Agnes Dean, an up-and-coming star who's nothing short of terrific to work with. And I think the dynamic that we had together as humans, as Kevin and Agnes, helped develop that bond. There was an immediate trust with the material that we had to engage with, an immediate trust in each other. And there's a lot of love there, so I think that the honesty of that romance and the honesty of that love story was all the easier. But I think just in terms of exposing oneself to the trauma of the First World War, that's something that I couldn't underestimate. So it wasn't something that I could create answers for. I had to just trust in the context and trust in the material and hope that the audience come to the kind of conclusions that we wanted them to come to.
Just to add a small point about the book, for those who don't know the book, it's actually, for someone who's not from Scotland, it's written in a dialect which is quite difficult to get through, but if you stick with it, it's an amazing read. Thankfully, Terence wrote the script in plain English for all of us to give this book and film a wider audience.
Hola.
Hi, I would like to know, could you talk about the role of the leading lady, not only in the film, but also in general, or women, for example, because the strength of the leading of the leading actress, for example, portrays the role of a very strong woman, and that final scene where she smiles, it's sort of like there's hope in her eyes, and the way, because of that smile. I would like to ask Kevin as well, by the way, what was it like to work with Terence Davies? Because his rhythms are very specific in the film. The movements are very calm and relaxed and very paused vis-a-vis in front of the camera. How did you do those? How did you shoot those scenes? Because they were very relaxed and very, very smooth and slow.
Going back to the Agnes, who is a remarkable actress. In fact, so this is another remarkable actor. I was blessed with a wonderful cast. But when I was growing up in the 50s, there were a lot of pictures which came from America where the woman was the heroine, or that heaven allows. Love is a Benny Splendid thing. They're not very good, but they were terribly popular. And my sisters took me to see them, so it was perfectly natural for a woman to be the heroine. But what you have to do when you're working towards stillness, you cannot then have the actors acting. That's one of the great problems with cinema now, particularly British cinema. Actors act all over the place, and you don't feel anything except that they're just overdoing it. It's very difficult to say to someone, don't act, just be. Because when you do that, they'll do things that they're not aware of. Little tiny things which on stage you wouldn't see. You may not even notice them in the film, but there's a very early scene between Jörn and Chris, where he just comes in and makes some tea. That's all he does, and he's singing a song. And when we did Through the Hearth, Kevin automatically just had some keys and just put them in, so you've got to keep that in, because it's lovely touches like that. Film captures the fleeting moment. It captures truth, and when it's not true, you can tell. In terms of working with Terence, it was
a joy. He's the most relaxed director I've ever worked with. The environment on set is it's very placid, it's very calm. It almost feels like the calm before the storm when you go into a scene, because the weight of the material that you're dealing with, certainly in this instance, is such that there needs to be a calm, there needs to be composure. And Terence would almost micro-direct to a point where the notes would be very sparing, and he wouldn't always tell you what he thought, which is normally a really good sign. So I think if there was something specific to get, it would come in and kind of micro-direct that beat. If there was an overwhelming sense of the scene that maybe it took us more than one or two takes, which we didn't do an awful lot more of, I have to say. But if there was something that we were really trying to get, in particular with relation to the war, Terence would come in and there'd be a little anecdote, and I remember him saying there was a scene about Ewan's fear of going away and really not wanting to go, and his fear of being accused of being a coward, not from the country but from the love of his life. And he came up and he just said, "Kevin, do you know that in the first half hour of the Somme 50,000 soldiers died and the majority of them were Scottish?" And then he walked away, and then we went into that scene with that kind of information. So that's how brilliant he can be in the moment. I don't know that many directors would direct with that kind of information, and impart that wisdom, and also that then trusts your actor. And when you feel trusted as an actor, it validates your place on the set, and it completely emancipates you from any fear. So you're just prepared to go for it in that sense. And Agnes was the exact same. There was so much trust, in particular with the scenes that go really dark. When Ewan's character turns, there's so much trust that you know that in a wide shot, you're probably only going to get one or two goes at it, so therefore you know that you can almost overcommit to it. And like you see, those little micro nuances that are there. When you act in the wide, then you have to physicalise it with your entire being, and when you get a director who allows you to do that, all those little touches, they're like safety nets around the set. You know, you feel rooted in the space, and therefore there's an honesty and a performance that comes without you even being aware of it.
And most of it was shot in less than 4 takes. That's due to wonderful actors like this.
Buenas tardes. Lo primero.
Hi, good afternoon. Congratulations, first of all, for the film, for everything that it transmits and how it's been made, and for the entire cast, by the way. A lot of emotions went through me when I watched it, and very, very interesting and very well made, by the way. I would like to, in that sense, talk about a scene that I think Kevin has just referred to. That scene when he comes back, when Ewan comes back from the war, okay, and he's completely transformed, for me, is tremendously excessive, I would say, vis-a-vis his character, because of how he was beforehand. So therefore, I would like to know, is that how it appears in the novel, or I think it has been changed for the film, or whether do you believe it's quite logical that he has that enormous change? And what was it for you, Kevin? Perhaps you've already answered this to a certain extent, but I would loved to have asked Chris the same question. I love both of you because these are characters. I'd never met you before and seen you before, so thank you very much for that. Could you answer those questions, please?
Yes, so the extreme change is exactly plays out in the novel and also in the screenplay. And I was very scared of that transition because for very good reasons, both authors leave the gap out. They leave the space. We don't know what happened to Ewan when he went away. We only know that he came back an entirely changed being. So it was up to me to create that space for Kevin, not for Terence or Agnes or Chris. It was only for me to create, and only I will ever know that information. And that's the way it will stay. But no, I got quite scared at how that was going to be received, and I think you have to. Terence's way of working is that, you know, if you can commit to it 110%, then we'll buy it, and the audience will receive that information. And also, it's a story beat. It serves the story. It motors the story on, because in all great drama there has to be tension, and at a point just before Ewan leaves, there's complete harmony between Chris and Ewan and baby Ewan. And so that's really where the story wants to stop, but we know that the story has to go into the next level. So in terms of the transition, it was, if you don't commit to it in a way that's excessive, as you say, then I think you're left with a kind of mediocre, lukewarm kind of version of the story, and I feel like he has to go so severe. And my main focus for doing that was through fear, his fear of being called a coward, the accusation of cowardice, which in the end is, turns to be true. But I think the fear of a loved one and the woman of your life accusing you of being a coward, which Chris never does, but Ewan is driven by that fear and channeled by that. The fear and knowledge of what's going to happen as well. The trenches were, hell on earth times a million, and for him to be experiencing that and exposed to that as a young man for a cause that he completely disagrees with, for something that he doesn't want to fight for. He gives everything up. He has no choice in the fact that he has to give up his family and his loved ones. And so I think he is exposed to a way of life when he's away that is just not, he shouldn't be exposed to that. And so his character changes. And I think the worst thing that we do, as humans, we react. One of the worst emotions you can have is fear, if that even is an emotion. I think the main drive is the fear of it all.
Good afternoon, and congratulations once again for the movie. I wanted to ask precisely about the final act, that it's like the most frenetic and dramatic part of the story. And my question is, I'm very interested in those very violent scenes that we find at the end of the story. In terms of production, in work on the place, in the set, sorry, how did you co-work to make that very intense scene of your character, Kevin, at the end of the story? How do you work? How did you get, when you were going to shoot inside the character? Did you you need your space to prepare it before? How was that shooting protocol for?
Well, I think again it goes back to the platform in the room that Terence facilitates. He enables an actor to be spontaneous in the moment, and that's as close to perfection as you can achieve as an actor. You don't know what's going to happen next, and that's where it's exciting. So when that platform is created for you in an environment where the material is so dark and so extreme, then the possibilities are quite terrifying, to be perfectly honest. So we didn't really rehearse that scene a lot, didn't we? Not we kind of.
No, and indeed no scenes were rehearsed too long. Otherwise, you would lose spontaneity. You just do, and you have to feel that on not just a scene basis, but a shot basis. You think they're really on the ball today. I don't need to do very much, or they need a little something today. But run through the scene a few times, and you can then tell when they're ready, and then that's more exciting because it's not rehearsed in that sense. It's still very much alive. And keep it. It has to be spontaneous. It has to look true. After 7 takes, I think most actors just simply repeat, and it's not interesting. But those early takes, you get a lot. It was Bresson who said, "What you get consciously is all right, but what you get unconsciously, now that's really interesting."
Thank you very much. And I have now, what have you said? I have a very big curiosity. Did you shot the scenes of the conflict of the character before the ones done when he's maintaining like a good relation with her wife?
I have absolutely no idea.
Thank you very much.
Hola, buenas tardes y felicidades.
Hi, good afternoon, and congratulations for the film. I would like to ask you, one of the aspects that drew my attention, and you could already seen it in your previous film, the importance of music and the songs. You have a great passion for very traditional Scottish songs, which is almost another character in the film. And how you selected the songs, what role do you believe they play in the film? And also to Kevin, vis-a-vis, what has it meant to sing again, even though you sang after Sunshine on Leeds, I think you said, and What do you think that this, well, I mean, and congratulations, by the way, and what do you think this role is going to mean for the rest of your career, Kevin?
Well, first and foremost, in terms of the song, the song is such a part of the novel as well. There's a lyrical nature and a melodic nature to the prose in the novel, and I think Terence captures that really beautifully in the script. And there was, I remember there was a stage direction where it was just Ewan sings. Ewan sings what or where or who. So we kind of together came up with the lyrics for the song, the melody for a song, and there was a lyrical thing about Burns, Robert Burns, a great Scottish poet, and it was about, it's a title called The Lass That Made the Bed for Me, and it felt entirely apt for Ewan and Chris and the arrival of baby Ewan. So we had the lyrics, and then I kind of went away and came up with a very, very simple melody and begged Terence to allow me to just do it in the moment and see what came out. And that's kind of what happened. I guess there was trust from your side and sheer panic from my side. And then we went in and done it, and it was just, I think it was very, very tender. It was a nice tender moment, and that's the moment that you wanted to achieve, wasn't it?
Yes, but music is really important, but it's overused. You know, when music is used to underpin something, it's always more powerful, or juxtaposition to it, it's always much more powerful. Now music is used as wallpaper. You know, you're supposed to feel this when you hear that. That's not interesting. I recall things from when I was 18 when I saw it on television. There used to be a program on BBC4 called Your 100 Best Tunes, which were all the popular classics. And there was one which really struck me. It was called the Glasgow Orpheus Choir singing this song called All in the April Evening. I'd never forgotten it. And when I was writing the screenplay, I thought, we've got to have that. That's got to be in. But if you allow the music to underpin that, then the real power comes from the silence between the music. But I write it, when I write the script, I write every track, dissolve, everything, every piece of music, because very often the shots are timed to that. So it has to be cleared beforehand. Otherwise, if you can't clear it, then you've got to find something else. But it has to be instinctive when you're writing. You think, I know this is right. I don't know how I know, but I know. And because when you see films that have used music superbly, like the great musicals, it adds a huge amount. Can you imagine Psycho without that wonderful score? You can't. It's so much part of it, but it doesn't dominate. It really deepens the story. And I love music. I love music and movement. When the camera is moving and there is music, whatever it is, if it's done well, I really do find it thrilling.
Hi. In this story, it's full of emotion that moves the water of the deaths, and those deaths that break love and human life. Who's the coward at the end of the day? Those that participated in the war, who denied or didn't want to participate in the war. I believe, nevertheless, that novel is a literary discourse. A literary discourse is a political interpretation in it as well. Because when one writes, one has a political conscience, and also from an artistic standpoint. When you made this film, don't tell me that you don't feel, you have not included how you feel, because I think you've made a mistake there. And excuse me for saying this, but the actor has just said, Kevin has just said, when he saw, when you told him 50,000 soldiers had died and most were Scottish, he's a non-native speaker, by the way, so I'm waiting for him to finish the sentence. Okay, so relax. On the front, a lot of soldiers, for example, that have died in Iraq. So you can't sort of say that you leave that out of your mind when you're writing a script, and the political and all the warfare issues don't come into mind. Oh, this is a critic. It's a critic. He's saying he's criticizing the politics of Great Britain, for example, in the Gulf War and so on and so forth.
Quite frankly, I think that's nonsense. It wasn't about present war, it was about war per se. There's no such thing as a coward. If you interpret that who is or is not to blame, that's not the point. And as I said before, I am not a political animal, so those things are not in my mind. Yes, of course I'm aware of the Iraq War, but what has it got to do with telling that narrative? And the answer is nothing. I think your question is not only superfluous, I think it's almost offensive.
No, I wasn't trying to be offensive. I was just trying to say that cinema and images can be interpreted in many ways. And when you made this film, you have your interpretation. You made the film. And we, as the audience, we have our own interpretation. When I asked you, why does this film... When an author writes a novel in Scotland, someone is going to read that novel in South Africa, and someone's going to read it in Zimbabwe, and someone's going to read it in the US, and someone in Iraq, and each one... Yeah, and
the implication is that they should read it in the way that you've read it, or they respond the way you responded. The audience completes the act by interpreting it, and what that interpretation is lies with them. It's going to be different for everyone. Obviously, there are questions in it that it doesn't answer to you, in which case the film has failed. But you cannot put over some kind of political motif when it is not there. And that was not what I was interested in. I was interested in the human story, and that transcends everything, including war.
I think the note as well about the Somme, it wasn't pitched as a political ideal to get me into the moment. It was pitched as a moment of awareness and how war the idea of it has affected a young soldier. We're not here to make a war film. We're here to make a film about love and endurance, and in spite of war, how humanity can break through.
Muy bien, pues terminamos aquí.
Okay, end of the press conference. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.